Good morning and welcome to Channing Unitarian Universalist Church. Can everyone hear me in the back? Awesome. We're glad you joined us for worship today. Whoever you are, whatever your theological, spiritual, political, sexual, or racial orientation or gender identity, you are welcome to worship here and become a part of this community. Are there any announcements this morning? There's an echo on the computer. Debbie?
I'll just remind everybody about the yard sale coming up. Have anything to contribute, feel free to bring it in on Sunday.
The yard sale is coming up. What's the date, Debbie?
October 2nd.
October 2nd. So if you have anything that you'd like to donate to be sold for the yard sale, you can bring it in on any Sunday.
And we'll need help that day if anybody has a few hours to spare. Or
And if you're able to volunteer, please let Debbie know. Any other announcements this morning? Then I will invite and introduce Reverend Deborah Mills to come up and do our ingathering prayer. Barbara, I'm sorry. I called you Deborah.
that's all right.
Yeah.
I've never been called Deborah before. That's a good name.
It's a good name.
It is a good name. I agree.
That's probably why it felt to me.
That's right. That's right. Now, this house is for the ingathering of nature and human nature. It is a house of friendships, a haven in trouble, an open room for the encouragement of our struggle. It is a house of freedom, guarding the dignity and worth of every person. It offers a platform for the free voice, for declaring, both in times of security and danger, the full and undivided conflict of opinion. It is a house of truth-seeking, where scientists can encourage devotion to their quest, where mystics can abide in the community of searchers. It is a house of art, adorning its celebrations with melodies and handiworks. And it is a house of prophecy, outrunning times past and times present, in visions of growth and progress. This house is a cradle for our dreams, the workshop of our common endeavor. Thank you.
We'll now have our first opportunity for gathered greetings for this service. Please take a moment to say hi to your neighbors. To protect against COVID, we will try to avoid shaking hands. You can wave and say hi. So please take a moment to say hi to your neighbor. And then please stand as you're willing and able. And I'll light the chalice. We know it'll go out immediately because of the wind, but we will still say the words together as I light it. Kindling this flame of our liberal heritage in our chalice of community, let us open to the presence of the sacred and our affirmation. Love is the doctrine of this church, the quest for truth its sacrament, and service is its prayer. To dwell together in peace, to seek knowledge and freedom, to serve humanity in fellowship, to the end that all souls shall grow into harmony with the divine. Thus do we covenant with each other and with God. Please be seated. If it is language that makes us human, one half of language is to listen. Silence can exist without speech, but speech cannot live without silence. Listen to the speech of others. Listen even more to their silence. We now have the opportunity to share our joys and concerns with one another. And because we know flame doesn't stay lit in the breeze like this, we'll be setting candles on the table instead of lighting them. If you have one, because of our amplification, I ask you if you are willing and able to come up front and speak your joy and concern into the microphone, or if you'd prefer, raise your hand and I'll come and hear what it is and then repeat it.
I just want to offer a joy for another beautiful Sunday where we've been able to enjoy this time outside in the sunshine together.
I'm gonna light one because both of my kids are here today, and it was quite the convincing that needed to be done to get the 12-year-old to come this morning, but he's helping, so he gets paid. We'll do one candle for everyone in the congregation who's working on regaining health and continuing to strengthen after dealing with various ailments that may have happened. And then one final candle for all those joys and concerns that we hold deep within our hearts. I'll invite Reverend Mills up again for our moment of prayer and meditation.
I know it was only a week ago that we had to think about September 11th again, but it's been 20 years, as we all know, since that fateful day. I was reminded of it again this morning coming here. I was stuck in traffic in Abington as the race was going on. Probably some of you were also. I'd like us all to just gather our thoughts and reflect on what that moment was like 20 years ago. It was a day just like today, a day that no one could have envisioned, and a day that brought sadness, and a day that I think shocked everyone. I remember my mother was alive at that time, in her late 80s, and she said to us, "This is your Pearl Harbor." I think that that statement is true. What I hope for all of us in the coming weeks, months, and years is a time when we can feel unified again. Not just here at church, but in our communities, in our states, in our country, and in our world. I have great faith in people and great faith in us as Americans. I hope that you can keep all of those people in your thoughts who didn't make it on September 11th of 2001. But keep in mind all of those people who are still being affected today, including a family who lives right in Athens. Please take a few moments and commune in any way that you find comfortable with your God and find solace and comfort in doing so.
The purpose of church is to encourage all who gather here to grow more generous in spirit and in action. This is the great end of all the world's faith traditions, to bring the human being closer to the divine by acts of creation and compassion. We now take an offering that allows us to exercise that all-important generosity of spirit, an offering that will support this self-supporting church and its many ministries. The gifts of the congregation will now be most gratefully received. Please stand as you're willing and able and join in speaking, not singing. Normally we sing this part, our spirit of truth. Spirit of truth, of life, of power, we bring ourselves as gifts to thee. Oh, bind our hearts this sacred hour in faith and hope and charity. Amen. Please be seated. And I will once again invite Reverend Barbara Mills up. Or Deborah. You have a new name now.
I like. I'm going to remove my mask as I speak and do the sermon, if that's okay. I am fully vaccinated, as I know all of you are too. But sometimes that doesn't make any difference in these times. Thank you once again for inviting me. I appreciate that. Now you can sit back and relax a little bit. This will be a little story that I'm going to tell you this morning. Now, once upon a time, there was a world without COVID. People woke up in the morning, they rolled out of bed, ready to start a new day. They showered and they dressed and they ate breakfast. And then they went off to work or school, or they otherwise engaged in their normal routine activities. Now, this was a long, long time ago. So some of you probably have difficulty remembering what lives were like back then. But if my memory serves me well, it was a time of great joy and freedom. People walked freely with others and always 6 feet apart. They attended classes and concerts together. They even sat next to co-workers in offices. They enjoyed family meals inside together, and they even ate out at restaurants with strangers near them, were only worn at costume parties, and drive-by birthday parades had not yet been invented. Shoppers actually bought needed goods by going into a brick and mortar store, and no one gave a thought to who had or had not been recently vaccinated. Yes, it was truly a time of pure bliss and wonder until the ogre came to their villages one day. Now, this ogre was unlike any that the people had ever seen. It was big and scary, as almost all ogres are, but it was also unique. No one in all the world had ever encountered an ogre so terrifying as this one. It arrived one day in early winter in the year of 2020. It appeared at first to be similar to one that most folks had seen or at least heard of before, but soon they learned that this ogre was very different. It was bigger and meaner than anyone could have imagined. And it was so much stronger than any they'd seen in the past. This ogre was huge and could manifest itself in many forms and in many places, all at the same time, wreaking havoc wherever it went. It attacked at random and without mercy. In the beginning, it counted amongst its tastiest victims the eldest among us and the most vulnerable, those who had diminished defenses and pre-existing conditions that made it doubly hard for them to fight off the fiend. As time went by, however, its pressure necessitated the closing of schools and offices as it began to attack the middle agers and the youngest among us. While often the children did not show signs of the affliction brought on by the ogre, they were used by the beast as conveyors of illness and destruction. There was great alarm across the world, in every town, in every village, in every city, and in every state and country. No one was impervious to the wrath of this ogre, and people everywhere despaired and were consumed with worry and fear, certain that their demise was imminent. One group, however, called scientists, were not willing to throw in the towel. These scientists, many doctors and biologists, had fought ogres before with the help of other medical professionals. And they were just as afraid as were the people in every town, village, city, country, and state in the world. But they were determined to at least try to wage battle with this terrible beast. So they began to exchange ideas and to discuss experimental treatments to combat the illness brought on by the ogre. Despite never having seen or heard of this particular creature, they were familiar with some of its relatives. In years past, they had heard stories from a long time ago when polio and diphtheria and smallpox had run rampant throughout the world, terrifying all and attacking many. In the more recent past, they had fought against AIDS and SARS with marvelous success, and that gave them the courage to once again proceed into battle. Armed with little more than hope and audacity, these scientists set up labs and began the arduous process of combining their vast array of knowledge about ogres in general, and in this one in particular, in preparation of discovering a way to fight it. Months and months went by with nothing but failure to show for their attempts. But this group did not give up. Day after day and night after night, they worked side by side to find a way out of the clutches of this ogre. They were not alone, however. Nurses and EMTs, firefighters, police officers, grocery workers and delivery people, restaurant owners and servers, truckers and assembly workers, all toiled tirelessly to keep our world going. Workers who could no longer safely venture out into the streets to go to work set up offices at home and juggled their children's schedules and needs with their own. They valiantly tried to keep food on the table, a roof overhead, and a job by which they could earn money, and to hold on to their fleeting and ever increasingly elusive sanity. They transformed themselves into teachers when their children could not attend school, and playmates to entertain their little ones. It was a time of great uncertainty and terror, and many people feared that no amount of worry or knowledge could ever defeat this ogre. As time went by, however, tiny strides were being made. Masks became a coveted and necessary item of apparel, and even children as young as 2 began to be seen on the streets with them. Would they be a substantial barrier to the horrifying and forceful breath expelled by the devious ogre? Only time would tell. And tell it did. When the brilliant scientists valiantly introduced us to a vaccine that they and the rest of the world prayed would curb the destruction caused by the ogre, it was with some trepidation, but also with renewed hope that the new weapon was received. The world welcomed it. Millions rushed to receive their first shot, spending countless hours, I'm sure you all remember, on your laptops and on your phones to secure a spot in which you could be inoculate. Some had to drive hours and endure the cold and long lines to get vaccinated, but they knew that this might be their only hope of winning the battle against the ogre. Finally, they could see the light at the end of the tunnel, and they anticipated an end to the war with that dreaded and determined ogre, now known as COVID-19. Some people, however, were not as eager to accept the scientists' new potion. What if it wasn't as effective as everyone hoped? Had the vaccine been rushed? Were the side effects worse than the disease? Could our government be using this vaccine to track its citizens' activities and whereabouts? Thankfully, most people understood that taking the vaccine would benefit them and their families and keep them safe from harm. And they gladly and willingly got the shots that would keep the dreaded and powerful ogre from their doors. As the months passed, the end of the terrifying reign of the monster appeared to be in sight, and the people rejoiced. Masks were removed, first outside and then inside. Restrictions were eased regarding social distancing, and some semblance of normalcy began to return to our world. However, this newly regained freedom was short-lived. The naysayers who would refuse to get their vaccines hindered the eradication of this disease, and before long, the ogre had returned with a vengeance. Mask wearing became the norm for many once again, and fear was once more in the hearts of the people. Even some people who had been fully vaccinated began to get sick, along with more and more children and those with suppressed immune systems. The people cried out in anger and in disbelief. If only all of the people had taken precautions. Why couldn't they see that the only way to fight this ogre would all work together in unison? The leaders around the world gathered again in grief and sorrow. Together, they decided that they had two options. They could throw up their hands and give in to the ogre and allow it to ravage their people, or they could continue to fight valiantly to defeat it. The first choice didn't seem like a viable one to any intelligent person. So they dug in their heels and they renewed their decision to continue their struggle. Alas, fighting an ogre has never, ever been easy. Any of you remember Beowulf and Grendel? Everybody does. Just when the villagers thought that the danger was over, Beowulf's mother arose from her den, full of fury and determination to avenge her son's death. Hell really hath no fury, like a woman's school. And so the fight continued. Nurses and doctors and teachers and politicians and bus drivers and mothers and fathers and store clerks and restaurant owners and school children and everyone else from every walk of life, that again actions would eventually corral the beast and bring them all back to a renewed sense of well-being and safety in the days ahead. Only time would tell. Now, like most of you, I have always enjoyed a good fairy tale. As a child, I remember well the contrasting emotions between terror and anticipation as I heard again and again the scary Grimm's fairy about Hansel and Gretel. The worst for me was the big bad wolf. Now, on one level, I knew that they were just stories, events that could and never, ever would happen. But on another level, there was always lurking behind some tree, or probably more likely under my bed, an evil monster just waiting to jump out and attack me. Most of me knew that this wasn't really true, but a little scared part of me was always at the ready, prepared to find an escape route and a clear way out of danger. Often, I feel like that today. After months and months of living in limbo, always waiting with dread for the next shoe to fall, I had begun to let down my guard. I was a full believer in the power of the vaccine, as I still am, and sensibility to eradicate our ogre, or at least to hold it at bay. This fall, I am less sure of that fact. I look at what's occurring in Texas and Florida, Louisiana and Georgia, and I question not only the sanity, but also the intelligence of those governors and mayors. For me, the obvious and blatant truth is that masks work and vaccines can if they make their way into enough arms in a timely fashion. I want my normal life back. I want to go to a concert at the South Shore Music Circus. I want to go to Fenway again. I want to go to Mother Anna's in Pembroke when the temperatures dip and not freeze my butt off. I want to be safe indoors again. I want to go to the movies. I definitely want to sing in church. What I don't want is the following: distrust and anger for my fellow Americans, worry over the health of my two little granddaughters, and concern about if my mask matches my outfit. Every fall, especially when I was teaching, I looked with anticipation to the renewal of normalcy and routine in my life. Summer was great and my schedule was freer, but I am a creature of habit and I like to know what my next move is. I think that's what I dislike most about this new normal. It doesn't feel normal at all. It feels scary and shaky and like something of which I cannot depend. Let us all pray for the return to a normalcy that feels supportive, not tentative, sane, not crazy, steady, and not precarious, safe, and not dangerous. If we all work together, I believe that it can be ours again. For now, I think I'll still check into my bed and behind the doors before I go to sleep, just in case that ogre is coming for me too. I don't know if any of you remember that song? You do. Good. I saw a few heads nodding and a few feet tapping. I used it last week when I delivered the same sermon at my church, UU Weymouth. And it was pretty much the same reaction. As we leave this sacred space, this beautiful space, I hope that you are able to find joy, hope, kindness, and support in your lives. And I hope further that you're able to share those things. Because if we don't have each other, we really have nothing. Amen.
Imagining that our chalice is still lit, please stand as you're willing and able and speak our words in your order of service. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, or the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again.
Now I know, don't be scared. Daddy is right. Know a lot and a little bit not.
Just to note that in lieu of coffee hour, we have conversation hour right now following church.